Hey everyone, you just tuned in to the NetSuite podcast. I'm your host, Kendall Fisher, and if you've been keeping up with our Superheroes of Finance series, then you may have seen we recently announced a new member, Forecastic Man. On this episode, we'll talk about Forecastic Man, chatting with content director Art Wittmann, who's helped lead the creation of these superheroes. Wittmann will dive into a bit of Forecastic Man's origin story, his superpower ability to see into the future, and his passion for helping entrepreneurs, finance teams, and growing businesses everywhere. He'll even chat a bit about the importance of forecasting and how NetSuite helps businesses overcome the challenges typically associated with it. Then I'm excited to bring on a real-life superhero, Amandafice. She's the Vice President of Finance at T3 Micro, a leading manufacturer of hairstyling tools. She'll talk about her own origin story and her love of finance before diving into her journey with T3. One of the biggest challenges she faced as a leader of the company was handling the pains that come with quick growth. Getting processes in place as a company scales is a huge undertaking. Afeiche will explain how NetSuite helped T3 overcome those challenges and then overcome an onslaught of obstacles that came with the influx of demand and supply chain issues amid the pandemic. She'll explain why demand planning and forecasting became a critical component to the T3 business strategy and how they're using that as we enter a new age of growth. That's all coming up, so stay tuned.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
First up, I'd like to welcome NetSuite Content Director Art Wittmann to introduce Forecastic Man. Hi, Art. Welcome to the NetSuite podcast.
Hey, Kendall. Glad to be here. First time on the podcast.
I know. I can't believe that, but I'm now of course, I'm sure you'll be on several times after this, but I'm glad that this is your first time and we're going to start it right with a little Forecastic Man intro.
Yeah, Forecastic Man's cool. I'm excited to talk about him.
Well, before we dive into him, you've been really deeply involved in the creation of these superheroes and their origin stories, which I know because I've seen it firsthand. I've sometimes worked side by side with you on it. So before we get into Forecastic Man, why were you asked to help lead this project? Where does your love of superheroes come from?
I think every kid enjoys superhero stories when they're young. But I kind of have a pretty nerdy side and a pretty good imagination. So I think the thought was that I can probably add some of that color to some of our superheroes. And that's pretty much how it's gone. So the nerdier they are, the more they came from me.
There you go. Wait, so who's your favorite superhero of all time?
I really like Spider-Man because, even though he's doing good stuff in real life, he always has such a hard time in his personal life. So you got to really pull for Spider-Man, I think.
I love that. Well, and it's relatable, right? We all, whether we could all be superheroes in parts of our life. And then there are also the times that, even the greatest of superheroes struggles. So I think Spider-Man, Batman and Spider-Man are up there for me for sure.
Yeah, Spider-Man or Batman, especially in the original TV series, strong nerd quotient there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, after, learning about him, I would assume people are going to say Forecastic Man is their favorite superhero of all times. But what does he do? What's his superpower? For those people that, are tuning in right now and haven't read about Forecastic Man or haven't seen any of our promo videos around him, can you give us some insight?
Sure. So, he started out life as a pretty successful businessman. And I think this will be relatable to a lot of our listeners and viewers because a lot of people, have had good success in their business life and then had some rough patches. And he certainly had a pretty significant rough patch, pretty much to the extent that everything he thought about doing just didn't go right for him for a while.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, he was actually getting rid of some of his belongings. And in that process came across a ring that his grandmother had given him. And it turns out that when he put it on, the ring gave him the ability to see into the future, to do some forecasting for a business in a way that nobody else could. So that's a pretty strong superpower. And besides that, he's a pretty good athlete. You'll see that he's able to do things like jump from a moving plane or something like that. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, why would you say, obviously he has his own history, but why do you think he's so passionate about helping entrepreneurs, growing businesses and finance teams? I guess you could say learn from his mistakes. What do you think ignites that passion for him?
I think it really is just having that strong rough patch in his life where a lot of his business ideas didn't go well. And obviously anybody who's gifted with the ability to see into the future would want to share that with other people. And, in particular, since he was passionate about business, I think he wants to share the power for helping businesses do better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, some could use that power to do wrong and to do bad, right? But he's going to turn it into a good thing, which we love.
Yeah, I think he is. And of course, not all businesses are good. There's the occasional not so good business. You'll be careful of who he uses his power for.
There you go. We're talking obviously about forecasting. Why? I know this is kind of a big umbrella question, but if you could summarize it for us, why is forecasting so crucial to the success of growing businesses, especially right now?
Yeah, we look at right now, and we have the potential for really growth we haven't seen since the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
So if a business is going to take advantage of that, it's going to require some forecasting. They're going to have to look at where their business is strong, which products might do well.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to work with an unpredictable supply chain right now to make sure they have all the product in place and all the sales teams and marketing in place to really exploit that. So to make that happen, you really need to have a forecast, and you need to have a good idea of where you're going to be successful. And the better that idea is, the more money you're going to make. It's just pretty much that simple.
Well, and I love that you say that because, I think a year ago when you're forecasting, we were planning for the worst, right? Like we were like, what happens if our business plummets? How do we, kind of maintain that cash flow runway for as long as possible? But I love that you're saying now, like, we're seeing, crazy growth rates. So we're going to look to the future and we're looking for what happens if we're uber successful, right?
Yeah. Can we get the product? Will we have the people in place? Right now, those are the two toughest things for businesses. Making sure they have the right team in place and making sure they have the right flow of goods to make their business go.
Yeah. What makes forecasting challenging for growing businesses?
Well, I think, unless you're a business that really has some real strong long-term contracts, it's always just guessing what the market's going to want from you in the near future and extend it beyond that. So, in some cases, people have a pretty good idea of what is going to be demanded. Like if you produce a sort of a staple good, then you sort of know that people will need it. But that's almost never the case, right? I mean, you think about farmers, something that they might have a good crop, they might have a bad crop. Sometimes there's more demand for one sort of crop than another. Your competition, other farmers could do really well. So that could be a challenge for them. And in some cases, you could actually develop a new crop variant, which might actually really change your business and drive it substantially. So you'd sure like a forecastic man to help you out with that if it happens. So you know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Forecastic Man obviously helps solve these challenges, these problems in our fictional world. But what about in the real world? Like what can businesses leverage to help them overcome these sorts of obstacles?
Well, every business needs to go through a process of thinking through it. In many businesses, it can be a relatively simple process. What's my typical next quarter going to look like? What would a great quarter look like? What would a not so great quarter look like? And as you go through that process, you need to think about like, okay, does that mean I need more people or less people? Do I need more goods to sell or less goods to sell? Will I need to open new channels for sales? And in that whole process, it's basically how you plan your business. And this is an area where NetSuite can really help a lot. We have some great planning tools. A lot of businesses will start out with a spreadsheet, and once, eventually you get to a certain size where that spreadsheet just doesn't work all that well. And the great thing about tools from NetSuite is they can look at a lot of your existing sales and a lot of your existing purchases and inventory and help you include those in the process. So it just takes a lot of the grunt work out of creating a good forecast. And that's important.
Yeah. Tying all aspects of the business rather than just, kind of like your siloed, what you have in inventory, financials, whatever it may be, customers. It brings it all into one place and helps you provides a bigger picture of the entire business rather than having to kind of tie all these systems together to come up with that forecast, right?
Yeah. And, in most businesses, it's a long process to do a forecast without good tools. So you start out with your sales team trying to figure out what they can sell, your production team trying to figure out what they can make, your HR team figuring out if they can get the people that they need for all that stuff. And they all do it in their own silos, as you said. And then they come together and sort of work it through. And if they mesh, that's great, but they almost never do. So that's back to the drawing board to go back and try to figure out what you can really do. So really having the tools that have a good view across your business is just super helpful.
Awesome. Well, Art, I can't believe it, but we're already almost to the end here. You mentioned Forecastic Man and a little bit about his origin story and some of the cool things he's capable of doing, his athleticism. So what types of content, other than the origin story and the blog associated with that, what types of content should our listeners go and check out when it comes to Forecastic Man?
Yeah, NetSuite has a pretty rich set of content around forecasting, both descriptions of how our tools work so people can understand that better, and also some content on Brainyard and in blogs and also in video that really explain how forecasting works and various concepts in it. So there's a lot of content that NetSuite has to offer here.
Awesome. Well, I will provide some links to that in the description of this podcast episode. And Art, your first recording with NetSuite is done. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you're back on soon.
Thanks, Kendall. I loved it. Appreciate it being here.
Awesome.
Does your business have trouble managing inventory, projects, or even getting paid on time? Don't let spreadsheets and QuickBooks hold you back. If you want to get your business to a better place, take action now and make the move to NetSuite. Stop paying for multiple systems that don't give you the information you need when you need it. Ditch the spreadsheets and all the old software you've outgrown. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Everything you need, all in one place, instantaneously. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in revenue, save time and money with NetSuite.
Join the over 24,000 companies using NetSuite right now. Let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/business. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/business. netsuite.com/business.
Now I'm excited to introduce Amandafice, a real-life superhero and the Vice President of Finance at T3 Micro. Hi, Amanda. Welcome to the NetSuite podcast.
Hi, Kendall. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm super excited to chat with you, to get to know yet another superhero of finance being you. So thanks for joining us. Now, I know I gave you some details on Forecastic Man and his whole origin story right before we hit record on this. So I'm going to ask you to provide your backstory for our listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career journey up to this point.
Sure. So I always had like a passion for business and strategy, and really also loved numbers and analysis. So just going into finance was a natural progression for me. I started my career in really construction and manufacturing, and always wanted to get into the CPG space or work for a company where I could really identify with the product And, being a beauty junkie and my love for fashion and all things beauty, when this opportunity for T3 came about, I was super excited and really didn't think twice and took the job.
Yeah.
And it's been, over 6 great years, and it's been a wonderful journey.
What a jump that is from construction and what was it, warehousing into
Manufacturing.
manufacturing
Yeah.
and into hairstyling tools, would you call it? That's pretty amazing, but very cool. I love to hear that. So you've been in finance all along. Where did your love for finance really stem from, do you think?
I've always been very entrepreneurial, and I just really love business. I was the kid who would have a lemonade stand at the corner, just always, enamored with business. And I just, knowing my strengths personally, I was very numbers and data and, analytics focused. And though I very respect the creative mind so much, that really isn't my strong point. And so finance just really made sense for me, just because I really like the numbers. I love the story the numbers tell, and digging into the details and figuring things out and trying to anticipate, future trends. And so it just really was a great and natural progression for me.
Well, I mean, you're the perfect person to have on this podcast, because we are going to be talking about kind of that forecasting mindset here in a bit. What would you say, though, is your finance superpower? I mean, you said you knew your strengths. What are those? I mean, you don't have to just name one, but what would you say are your superpowers?
So I think just being data and KPI focused, and really remaining nimble, and taking quick learnings, and being able to pivot very quickly, especially in an environment that we're in right now.
I was about to say.
Yeah, you just need to be really open-minded,
Yeah.
and try to understand what the numbers are saying, and just have, plan A, B, and C top of mind, so that you can pivot and move quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm so excited to hear how you're using these kind of superpowers, like you said, with the changing business environment that we're in today, and in your current role as the VP of Finance for T3 Micro. But first, what is T3 Micro? I know I said, hairstyling tools, but can you tell us a bit more about the company?
Sure. We're a luxury hair tool company, and we're based out of Southern California. And our product, what we do is we focus on delivering a highly engineered, beautiful experience to, mostly women, I'll say, but women and men who use our products. And so every button and every feature is agonized and thought out and re-engineered and tested. And so we really pride ourselves in giving women just an amazing experience at home while doing their hair.
I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, to make sure that experience is consistent across, every single channel for every single customer. What would you say is kind of the key to making sure you're able to get that experience across?
Like I'd mentioned before, everything is really thought out, and we are an extremely collaborative group. And so maybe like other CPG companies where, you have one person kind of managing the product and working with the manufacturing team, we have a whole group. And so when you put, a bunch of women in the room, and everybody's saying, well, I really want this, and I would really love this. And so they listen to everything. And when feasible, we put it into our products. So yes, you're right. It's very difficult to make everybody happy, but I think we do a very, very good job at it. Our tools are fantastic.
Well, and having a bunch of people, with different perspectives joining in, diversity of thought is so important. So I'm sure that helps too to reach everybody's needs. That's great. And that explains a lot. You mentioned you joined in 2015. That explains a lot about why you would want to join a company like this, but I'm sure there were also areas for growth. What were some of the big challenges, or, we've dubbed them in these podcast episodes prior to this, some of the, I'm air quoting right now, operational villains that T3 that you faced in your role when you first joined the team?
So we've experienced some pretty significant growth over the past 6 years. And, when things are just moving so quickly and business is growing, our biggest struggle was to really lay the ground, lay the infrastructure out and say, okay, like these are our processes, and we're going to redefine them and redesign them. And this is how we're going to scale the business, because, the growth just came so quickly, and we were, in a way struggling to keep up. And so we're doing the work, and at the same time we're documenting the processes and redesigning them. I think, it was challenging, but the growth came, and we had to manage it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we hear it all the time. Too much. I mean, great growth, crazy fast growth. I mean, that comes with a lot of growing pains. That's, as great as it is, it's also, you're learning at the same time that you're building and continuing to grow this company. It can be super stressful. Sorry for my dog barking in the background. The joys of working from home. So how did you kind of overcome some of those growing pains? What processes, systems did you put in place to deal with that?
So we've been on NetSuite for quite some time, and we do utilize a lot of the suite. We use it for everything. So what we did is we really leveraged the expertise within the NetSuite group. And I have regular meetings with the NetSuite team, and I say, look, we need help. Like, what are other people doing? Is there a better way to do this? Or this is really a pain point for me. How do we fix it? And so over the years, we've really made some significant improvements to our processes. And sometimes it's, a very simple customization to the system, or sometimes it's just a complete overhaul of what we were doing. I know we had one person tell me, like, why are you doing it that way? And I just said, I don't know. What are other people doing? And so we did a lot of that, and we really focused on leveraging technology to work for our benefit. So, sometimes the NetSuite option won't work for us. They've recommended really great partners that they've worked with. So we've really used technology to really just work smart and not hard. I really feel badly to add headcount to do, non-value add work.
Right.
So we just try to, like I said, leverage the technology that's available to focus on analytics and FP&A.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like, what's one of the ways, can you give us an example of one of the ways in which like NetSuite has helped specifically in overcoming a major challenge, or, in keeping headcount down, so that you don't have to add extra headcount for jobs that just aren't worth it? Can you give us a specific example of that?
Yeah, I can give you many. So returns are a very big part of our business. And we had this process, when we were smaller, it wasn't that big of a deal, but when we grew and, things started picking up, and we wanted very detailed returns reporting by customer, by SKU, just being able to spin it a million different ways. The way we were setting up our SKUs in the system, they just suggested that we alter it slightly, and they helped us with a very minor customization, and it literally saved like 10 hours a month. It's something
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. And then the data, because what is happening before is we would have to export everything to Excel and manipulate and clean up all the data. And
Right.
all of that work is gone. So
Wow.
now we can use all the canned reports within the system. And it's just, you don't have to do all this really annoying data cleanup. So
manual work. Yeah.
yeah, and that's one example. If I may, I'll give one more.
Yeah, of course.
We were really struggling with AP. We do a lot of shoots, a lot of, we work with a lot of influencers and people that just need to be paid right away. And we're finding like we were having to do a check run like every week, every few days. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, because what would happen is somebody from our, creative group would come and say, I need this check. We're going to a photo shoot right now, whatever it may be. It just felt like we were in constant fire mode for these payments. And so I asked the NetSuite rep, like, is there something? And they, referred us to one of their partners who we transitioned our whole AP to paperless. Everybody, we don't sign any more checks. And it's so much easier. Invoices get approved so much quicker. Everybody approves them through emails. It's just relieved so much of pain points for everybody, especially the people who are not, NetSuite heavy users.
Yeah.
And it actually saved us a lot of money because we didn't need all of these NetSuite seats because now they were approving the invoices in their email.
Wow.
So that was all through our suggestion of our wonderful NetSuite rep. So
wow. Amazing. We love to hear those stories. That's great. Thank you. One thing I do want to talk about that we hit on a bit earlier, but I want to bring back now is, a lot of companies face some major challenges in their supply chain, in demand over the past year and a half since the pandemic. What challenges did you see, and how did NetSuite help you, as you said, kind of pivot and overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, so initially we were faced with demand issues, when the pandemic first hit. And not only were we getting less orders, but we were very reluctant to ship some of the orders that we were getting. You were worried about credit risks. And so in the beginning, NetSuite really helped us make very quick decisions on which orders to ship and what was going on just by looking at the customer dashboards and understanding their payment history very quickly. And then as the pandemic kind of progressed, it changed from demand to supply issues. So like many CPG companies, we're seeing shortages, we're seeing rising costs, longer transit times. So we're able to really pull we've been on NetSuite for, I want to say, I think more than 10 years.
Wow.
So we have a lot of historical data in there. And so we're able to look at the sales data, sales by SKU, by customer, by channel in many different ways, and just to really refine our demand planning. And so having everything in one place is just so helpful and allows you to make a decision so quickly.
Yeah, that goes with what we're kind of talking about, with Forecastic Man. We're talking about forecasting, planning, modeling, making sure that you're able to do that. But in a changing business environment, like we've seen and we'll continue to see, now in kind of a positive way where we're seeing this kind of new age of growth. How did NetSuite allow you to properly forecast and plan? I'm guessing, like you said, those historical records were supremely helpful over the past 10 years. But then now as we enter this kind of new age, this new kind of acceleration forward, how are you looking into the future and how are you using NetSuite to do so?
So we will continue to look at our historical data, but then we're also really focused on really leveraging technologies or new processes to make us go faster. We recently just built out a digital transformation and data and analytics team. who will be going to Suite World to meet with all the great vendors there just to see what's going on and what's out there.
Great.
But planning has always been a huge focus for us. So we've always done, long-term, short-term, monthly reforecast. And
Wow.
so our demand plan is really where everything kind of begins, in terms of all of our planning and our purchasing and just managing our lead times. So just the ability to have all of that data in NetSuite really at our fingertips has made our forecasting just so much easier, because it's all there. And
Yeah.
so when we're launching a new product or we're doing, a specific color, we can go back and look at, okay, a similar product launched with this, retailer at this time. And we take those trends and, massage them to make them fit the current situation. Um, so that's really how we've been using it. And it's been so helpful and so wonderful for us.
Why have you guys always focused so heavily kind of on demand planning? I mean, is it just kind of as a retail brand, as a manufacturer of these styling tools, or what is it specific to T3?
So our products are manufactured in Asia and just long lead times.
Okay.
I don't know if you're aware, it's taking things forever to come across the ocean right now, and all the
Yes.
ports are backed up. And
Yep.
so when we hear this news, we make conscious decisions to, okay, we're going to increase our weeks of supply, or we're going to pare back on our weeks of supply, depending upon the situation.
Mhm.
So it's really a lot of it's driven by external factors that are out of our control.
Mhm.
So that's always been a focus for us.
Got it. Yeah. We've had so many customers on the podcast and on our various series, blogs and whatnot, talk about, just how difficult it's been in those external factors, especially
Yeah.
over the past year and a half, and really trying to make the right decisions, in terms of product or whatever it manufacture, whatever it may be. So yes, we have heard it. If we've heard it once, we've heard it at least 20 times. So, you are not alone in that. So what would you say to an organization who is considering NetSuite, has been challenged with really demand planning, forecasting, and planning? What would you say to someone like that who's considering NetSuite right now?
Go do it. It is, I've used many ERP systems, and it's a really great tool if you don't have a heavy technical group within your company.
Mm.
So like a lot of CPG brands who maybe don't have coders or, database administrators, or all of this IT group, you really don't need it with NetSuite. And it is so easy to use, and there's so much that it can do. I think with every release, we learn so much more, and we're constantly revisiting how we use the system and how we can better use the system. Um, so I think in terms of value of money, it's a fantastic tool. Um, and I'm just always so surprised and delighted. Like when I go to these conferences, there's so much out there in terms of partners that seamlessly integrate with NetSuite if something within NetSuite's not working for you. Yeah, it's been a really great tool for us.
Awesome. I love that. And yes, Sweet World is coming up in October. And for everybody who's tuning in, you can register now. We'll have an in-person event, which we'd love to see you there. We miss all of you, but we'll also have a virtual event, for those who are staying home. So I'm glad you brought that up, Amanda, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody who's coming from T3. And I can't believe it, but we're already at our last question for this interview. And I always love this question because, we are talking about these superheroes of finance, and in our eyes, you are a real life superhero. So I want to wrap up with what would you want to share about the unsung heroes of finance, if you will? What do you wish more people knew?
I think maybe just being open to doing things a different way. I think sometimes in finance, you're just like very black and white and I, not really open to being creative. So
Mhm.
I just always ask for help.
Yeah.
I always question what we're doing and say, how can we work smarter? How can we do it better? And for that, I really rely on technology. It's evolving so quickly, and you can, leverage your existing relationships, whether it be with your ERP provider like NetSuite or wherever it might be within your network. Ask what other people are doing, and technology is relatively cheap. It's a lot cheaper than adding headcount.
Yeah.
So would just ask for help. Ask
That's
people
great.
around you, what are you guys doing, and work it that way.
That's great. Well, on that note, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast episode. This was super insightful. I love the stories. I love hearing everything that you guys are doing and will continue to do, and how you're leveraging NetSuite to get there. So appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love that advice from Amanda. Leverage all the technology that's available to you. And don't forget, it's okay to ask for help. Thank you so much to Amanda Afeiche and Art Wittmann for joining us on this episode. I've left a link in the description of this episode if you want to learn more about our newest member of the Superheroes of Finance, Forecastic Man. I also want to shout out to our editing crew over at Lampstand. And of course, all of you superheroes, as always, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe. Bye.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.